welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, it is the final episode of our 7-part FilmQuest 2024 coverage. And we are following up yesterday's episode on Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox with a conversation with the film's writer-director, Stimson Snead. And we got a great conversation coming up, a very fun one to close all this out. We talk about some of Stimson's actual inspirations, as well as some of the puzzle pieces we brought up on the main episode, and get into just how they pulled off this insane movie. But that is coming up here in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together, wherever it is that you're listening. I've been saying that on all 7 of these FilmQuest episodes. So if you are new to the show and you found us because of the festival, make sure you're subscribed. And if you've been enjoying Piecing It Together, maybe drop us a 5-star rating and review. That helps to make sure that even more people find the show. And then we'll get to do all kinds of fun stuff like what we did here with FilmQuest this year. So, other than that, you can follow me on social media at PiecingPod and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, a very fun community of film lovers who just love talking about movies. None of the internet riffraff, just fun, cool people who want to talk about movies. So come join us over there. And with that said, I've been telling you on all of these FilmQuest episodes, just because I know there's a lot of new listeners, we do get into spoilers on Piecing It Together. So spoiler alert for Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox. And that's probably the last time I'm going to say it correctly. You'll see as we try to get through the rest of this conversation. But let's talk to Stimson Snead. All right, Stimson Snead is with us to talk about Tim Travers and the Time Travel Paradox. I'm having so much trouble. This is such a mouthful, this movie title.
It is Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox, because I love alliteration.
You are so good at it at this point. You know what? Actually, I'm going to jump ahead. I was going to ask this later. I'm going to ask it right now. I have a theory. Maybe you've talked about this in some of the Q&As. Is Tim Travers a mushmouth time traveler? Is that where that name came from?
So when you're doing sci-fi comedy, and sci-fi comedy is one of my it's my genre happy place.
Yeah, sure.
I do other stuff, but I am in my happiest of selves when I'm doing science fiction comedy. When you do a title like Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox, you're sending a very clear message about exactly what kind of movie this is. This is Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, or my personal favorite, Duck Dodgers, which is better than Buck Rogers.
Remember Zach McCracken?
I do.
Yes.
I do remember Zach McCracken.
Yeah.
But yeah, these kind of names, they're not just funny and silly. If you're an independent filmmaker putting something out there into the world, it is sending a clear message about the type of movie this is. I've had this argument with distributors and sales agents about making the title something more dramatic or more generic. And it's like, no, our audience is niche. And when you hear Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox, you know exactly what you're in for better or for worse.
And I think that certain kind of genre fans are like, oh, okay, one of us. Like, they're going to hear that and they're going to be like, this guy knows what we like and is interested in making that kind of movies. So yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. So, I mean, just to bring it back, we're here at FilmQuest. This is the big closing night film of the festival. That must be pretty damn exciting after being here with your short.
I can only assume Jonathan's drinking problem got out of control this year, because I can't imagine what else could have gotten me this slot. But it's so weird to be here, because this is actually the first year I've been here personally, but it's not my first year having a project in FilmQuest. I did a film called Rotka, Rise of the Kitchen Appliances, all the way back in 2014 as part of the inaugural year of FilmQuest.
Was I here for that? I think I might have been here for
Did you see the one about the kitchen appliances that involved Emo Phillips voicing a blender eating a man's hand?
If I didn't see that here, I saw it somewhere, because I've seen that. Yeah.
That was me!
Okay, I did not realize that.
So my history with FilmQuest goes all the way back to when I was just getting out of college and getting my feet wet and getting into the industry professionally. Tim Travers is a huge deal for me. It's my first professional feature with Union. It is a big emotional achievement, and to be getting to be back here at FilmQuest and being here in person for the first time, where I'm frankly being treated like just the belle of the ball.
Yes.
It is Yeah, I joke and I be silly, but honestly, it gets me choked up. It's very emotional, and I'm really happy to be here. You cannot find a better audience than FilmQuest.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm doing 4 of these films here at the festival, 4 episodes on 4 different films, as well as some director follow-ups. But this is the most lighthearted, the most silly, the most fun. I can imagine the reaction at the theater. It must have been just a blast. I watched this on the screener, so.
We had big laughs, which was always delightful. Big, as far as the big heart goes, you know what? We may be sweet and funny, but we do have the highest body count.
That's true. Yeah,
I bet we have the highest body count.
Mostly the same name of the people, but So, splitting hairs.
Splitting hairs a little bit, but we're right up there.
Yeah.
I have always been of the view that life is funny.
Yeah.
Even tragedy is funny. People going through horrible, traumatic things in real life laugh and joke about it.
Mm-hmm.
The people who don't laugh are the ones who aren't actually experiencing it, because laughter is how you survive. One of the things in horror, and especially drama, that pulls me out of the narrative is a world in which characters don't have a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's such a basic human mechanism.
Yeah.
And where a lot of my stuff tends to get funny, in the case of Tim Travers, for example, it's not just that the world is funny. I have this attitude that all your supporting characters have their own lives going on. That has nothing to do with the main character or the main plot. They all have their own business. They are deeply disinterested in the main plot.
Yeah.
And where their own business can conflict with the narrative is really funny to me. Felicia Day's character, all of her own weird backstory and disinterest is where the humor comes from.
Sure.
Like, Tim Travers is one of those Rick and Morty style characters who can dominate an environment around him.
Yeah.
And her utter disinterest in him is so funny to me.
Yeah.
Because why would she be interested?
Of course, yeah. I mean,
she's got her own shit going on.
Yeah.
I can't name the character that Keith David plays, who appears at the end of the film, but he's got his own stuff going on and does not care for their feedback.
Right, absolutely. He knows what he knows, and that's what it's going to be. But checking Rick and Morty off the list here, one of the things that we talked about during the main conversation, a puzzle piece here, was that something that you talked to your lead actor about? Because it does feel like there's a lot of that style of humor in his performance here.
None at all. I think this actually germinates back to a different thing. Okay. I think Rick and Morty takes a lot of notes from a little TV show called Red Dwarf.
Okay.
And I also take a lot of notes from that same little TV show.
All right.
I like Rick and Morty. It's not my favorite show. It's not my least favorite show. When it's good, it's brilliant. I don't have a hot take. It's a good show.
Sure.
Watch. But when it comes to Red Dwarf, as far as I'm concerned, that's the greatest science fiction show comedy ever made.
Mm-hmm.
And all of my humor and style always goes back to Red Dwarf. And I have a very sneaking feeling, watching Rick and Morty, that so does Dan Harmon.
Yeah, it probably goes in a big circle here, yeah.
I think the similarity is not Rick and Morty, it's Red Dwarf.
Okay.
Which, by the way, if you have not seen the seminal BBC Vin Dave TV series that has lasted for 30 years, go watch Red Dwarf. It is the funniest thing ever made by man.
Wow. Okay, that's a recommendation right there, absolutely.
If I were trapped on a desert island with nothing to watch for the rest of my life, I would just watch Red Dwarf every night.
Amazing. I'm going to have to put that on my watch list.
It's really good.
Diving into the time travel aspect of it and just the kind of the science for the sake of, like, isn't science fun to dig into? I mean, it's a difficult thing to kind of make comps for this movie with its kind of point of view for science. We were thinking of Looper as an example of this, Rian Johnson's Looper, which is a movie that I think is so smart in the way that it approaches it, in where it is actually trying to deal with these paradoxes, which right there in the title. What about Looper? Are you a fan of that movie at all?
I do. I think it's a really good movie. It's not my favorite of Rian Johnson's work. I'm still a sucker for Brick.
Me too. Me too. So good.
Oh, yeah. Okay, this is just going to be a boring moment in the podcast because this is just you and I staring at each other, understanding the mutual brilliance that is Brick. But go see Brick.
It's so good.
It's so good. Oh, my God.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is it's a really good sci-fi, though, and it's a really it's a movie that knows, like, hey, you're watching this movie, you've probably seen a lot of other time travel movies, like, and so I didn't like put Terminator on my list, for example.
No, there's no Terminator in Tim Travers.
Right, exactly.
Although I love it.
Yeah. And but Looper, I thought definitely kind of fit the bill a little bit better. One of my guests brought up something that I actually haven't seen. I got to admit, Time Crimes.
Time Crimes? Okay. Yeah. Well, you and I have something in common because
you haven't seen
neither have I.
Okay, well then strike that from the list right now. What about 13 going on 30 as far as dealing with your younger self?
Not my not my go-to for that. No, as far as the time travel side of this goes, Tim Travers had an interesting origin. So this was based on a short that was never intended to be a feature.
Okay.
So it was not a proof of concept. It was not me toying with an idea that I wanted to expand. The short existed to be a single specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what that was born of was me being at a science fiction festival, Boston Sci-Fi, great festival, highly recommend. And I watched a time travel feature there that I won't name because I did not care for it.
Okay.
And if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all.
Fair.
I then went out and got drunk with some friends of mine who were over at MIT at the time, talking about what I wanted to see in a time travel movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is, there is real science about time travel.
Mm-hmm.
And it is mind-bendingly insane. Now, the big spoiler is all the real science boils down to why it doesn't work.
Right.
But the reasons it doesn't work are so interesting to sit down and really engage with.
Mm-hmm.
And so the short was born for the exclusive purpose of me wanting to sit down and engage with those ideas unapologetically.
Yeah.
To the point where the main character had no character arc.
Right.
The joke of the character was that he had no arc.
Mm-hmm.
He was just an avatar for the science. And that had to change for the feature a lot. But that DNA of a film that is unapologetically interested in these real theories, even when we are aggressively getting them wrong.
Yeah.
And I have had it explained to me at length by several MIT professors why I'm getting it so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But that genuine interest is part of the DNA. Of this movie.
No, I can absolutely see that. I mean, one thing that we kind of talked about is the I fucking love science kind of meme culture, and like the idea of people who don't know just trying to kind of work it out for themselves. And I feel like that's something that Tim Travers is doing here. He doesn't know, even though he's able to build this time machine and he's obviously a step ahead of a lot of us, but at the same time, he has no clue. And he's just so interested in figuring this out, and it just drives him. And even though the movie isn't necessarily about him figuring it out, it's about everything that happens along the way. So
it's about what he learns about himself when he gets into that, but that real question is still there.
Yeah.
That never goes away. There's never a point where the film becomes science magic.
Right.
Although I've at least a few critics who would argue aggressively that the whole thing is science magic.
Yeah.
But his own needs and where they conflict with the actual science are a lot of what this story is about and where a lot of the humor comes from.
Yeah.
Again, going back to that idea that I think so much humor can be derived from when a world really has no interest in your arc.
Yeah. And that is an interesting thing about this character. It kind of doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he figures this out or not. He needs to figure himself out, really.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
I mean, without getting too far, this is a story about a man who hates himself, who really needs to learn to love himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Or he loves himself too much, and he needs to learn to really love himself in a real way.
Or find a way to connect with other human beings. You know what? There's a lot to talk about here.
Yeah.
I love engaging in it.
Yes, absolutely.
I definitely wasn't high as a goddamn kite when I came up with it.
I doubt that very much. Do you know what he's figured out in this movie? Like, can you, where you can wrap around everything that's going on?
I would have to spoil the entire film to do it, but once we turn the mic off, I know everything, and the actual science behind this film is pretty rock solid. We actually have one truly major thing we get wrong, and we call it out in a joke that I'm pretty confident most people don't notice.
Okay.
But we do actually acknowledge the part that we're getting wrong.
It's not the Verizon line, is it? Because that was one of my favorite jokes in the movie.
No, the Verizon line. Without getting too far into spoilers, there's multiple of the main character because he's time traveling a lot, and his phone consistently works.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I loved that. I thought that was great.
it makes sense intuitively that the phone would still work, but there would be a tech somewhere at Verizon who doesn't understand what's happening.
Yeah.
Who the system is telling that there's 20 of the same phone suddenly.
Yeah. You can make a side short just about that guy, just trying to trace these, figure out what's going on here. So,
it's like, I don't know how Verizon phones work. I don't know how their inner corporate system works.
Mm-hmm.
I am confident that somebody in this world who works there is having a bad day.
Yes.
Like a really bad day.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to hear about some of your actual influences aside from Red Dwarf, of course, but like other things like...
Well, that's a short conversation, but all right.
Well, I mean, are there any like in the cloning / time... I mean, all of these kind of things that this movie is made up of, are there other movies that were like kind of touchstones for what you're doing?
Weirdly enough, in the world of time travel, no.
Okay.
Because of this was literally me reacting to another film that I didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
The influence in this film, there are none, time travel-wise.
Mm-hmm.
This was me wanting to do something different.
Okay.
Specifically, I haven't seen this stuff before, and that's why I want to do it. And all of the film's best, and frankly, some of its worst, so its qualities and biggest flaws, are probably born of the fact that I am deliberately not engaging with other time travel movies, other than, I think, a pretty on-the-nose reference to Back to the Future, but come on, we all had to get that reference in there somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most of what I'm really engaging with influence-wise has to do with sci-fi comedy. So not just Red Dwarf, but I also look to shows like Futurama.
Mm-hmm.
I have a deep love of dark, twisted humor that has a lighthearted edge with things like Lex, Farscape, that type of science fiction. I like when things have a balance between the ridiculous, but characters who do not see it as ridiculous, for whom this is their real world life.
Yeah.
And that juxtaposition of something that is frankly silly to the audience and characters who are not afforded the luxury of treating it as silly, that to me is where you can get so much comedy and so much human insight. I mean, look at the world we live in right now, just regardless of anybody's political bent. It is hard to argue that it doesn't feel like a freaking circus right now.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make the problems we're all dealing with less real or less serious, but we should also be able to acknowledge this is like a goddamn cartoon.
Right. Yeah.
And I like characters and worlds who think on that same wavelength, that can take their problems seriously, even as they're aware that it is a joke that seems to be at their expense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously too new to be an influence in any way, but a movie that I feel like the same audience would love is Hundreds of Beavers from this year. I feel like that kind of human cartoon quality to this is something that would kind of go over really well.
I love that movie. I went out drinking with the writer and director of that movie not too long ago. And if he's listening to this right now, I want to take you up on your offer. I want to buy the beaver hat.
I'm sure.
Sorry, the raccoon hat. I want the hat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Money is no option. I will pay anything you want.
It's got to go up for charity at some point. I mean,
no, not for charity. It's got to go up to me, my closet, my future Halloween parties for people who are very specific that will get this joke.
Yeah.
I want this to go to the charity of Stimson Snead wants it.
There you go. Absolutely. I got to ask you, for anybody who does, get a chance to see this movie and then listens to this, I mean, how difficult was this shoot? Because I mean, I'm sure you talked about it during the Q&A here at FilmQuest some, but what you put this lead actor through, it must have been very difficult, I'd imagine.
I gave him a lot of hugs.
Yeah, sure.
This shoot was the hardest but best shoot I have ever had the pleasure of working on. Every member of this team is elite in their field. We had a truly phenomenal team of seasoned pros surrounding us. So this was not a case of us pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. These were all great pros in every supporting position, from sound to music, to our PAs, to our construction team, to our AD team, all of it, allowing myself and Sam and the folks in the creative roles to really cut loose. Now, none of that makes it easy. What we did was hard, but it was rewarding. There was never a day on set that I wasn't thrilled to be there. And I felt like that was the vibe for the whole crew. At least I hope it was.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it would be a fun one for sure. What was that set? Was that like how much of that was like CG and how much of it was an actual set?
The set?
Yeah.
There's no CG there at all.
It's just pure set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mind you, we have a huge amount of effect shots in this, but
Yeah.
all of the effect shots, because of the time travel, have to do with split screening, face
Sure.
replacement, body doubles, and the occasional explosion because I don't have it in my budget to blow up stuff for real.
Fair.
But no, everything on camera, there's nothing CG.
Yeah.
In terms of the world at all. That's all practical.
Okay, great.
One of the things I notice, especially on the indie scene, the well-budgeted indie scene, I should specify, there is an allure of crispness. There is a hyper-perfection in the visual styles, and you'll really see it on certain independent shorts where they had a great CG budget, and you'll get what is decent filming, and then CG scenes that feel like there's something out of a Marvel film, and it doesn't gel.
Right.
Because the CG, ironically, is too good.
Right.
I like in my shooting there to be a tactile feel. I want to see and feel a layer of dust. I like the idea that the audience is subconsciously aware that the camera operator might trip over something in the environment.
A dead body, perhaps.
Well, yeah, but I like that dirty physical space.
Yeah.
And it puts me in a weird spot where sometimes I feel like my stuff looks uglier than I want it to, but it feels visceral and there. And that's what matters most to me when I'm getting into that sort of aesthetic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it absolutely shows. And I mean, between that performance, which is a very difficult performance to pull off, I mean, it really kind of brings all this together.
I can't believe we've made it this far. We haven't name dropped him once. This film lives and dies on its lead actor, Samuel Dunning as Tim Travers. And it's so difficult as a director because you want to believe, especially when you're the one who puts the film together, hires everybody, finds the money, that you are the driving force. But there is a point as a director where you have to accept that if the actor isn't there, you don't have a movie.
Sure.
Tim Travers is a movie because Samuel Dunning is Tim Travers.
Yeah.
Nothing else takes greater precedent over that in this film.
I think that's a great place to wrap this up. What are you doing next now that this is out there in the world?
Well, right now we're trying to close our distribution deal, and because we're actively in the redlining phase, I cannot name with who or what, but hopefully by late Q1, early Q2 of 2025, everybody in the world will have access to this movie.
Beautiful. Right on.
I am shopping around another kids film called Treat Street, which I'd like to do with the same studio, if at all possible, because I love those people and they're wonderful. And beyond that, I just got a couple other projects I'm shopping around. Let's see what happens. We'll see who's interested in what.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. And hopefully we can get you back again for a regular Piecing It Together episode sometime.
It would be fantastic. I have a deep love of Bubba Hotep and would love to dive into it with you.
Ooh, all things Bruce Campbell. I'm always...
Absolutely. It is his finest work.
Oh, my God.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Stimson Snead about Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox. I got it all out right there perfectly. Look at that, I'm a pro. If you're enjoying Piecing It Together, especially if you're new to the show from FilmQuest, make sure that you are subscribed. We've got a lot of episodes on the way now that we have gotten all the FilmQuest episodes out. Next up is our live show on Heretic, which we'll have recorded this weekend at Downtown Cinemas in Las Vegas. I also have a bunch of episodes in the can ready to go on a bunch of great movies. The Wild Robot, Blink Twice, Megalopolis, not so great. But anyway, all kinds of movies. And we also have a Gladiator 2 live episode coming up later this month at Maya Cinemas in Las Vegas. So lots on the way. Make sure you are subscribed. You can also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join the Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. And don't forget, we do have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, from Awesome Movie Year, and from my music career. Lots of great stuff over there at patreon.com/bydavidrosen. And I really appreciate you all just being out there listening. But if you also want to support the show in that way, it is very much appreciated. I'd also love to hear from you all. If you've been listening to these FilmQuest episodes and you think, hey, I could talk about a movie through the lens of what other movies might have inspired it, now's the time. Get in touch with me. It's time to start scheduling more episodes. I'm always looking for more guests, and especially if you have a film or something that you also want to talk about, we will get you on an episode, and I would be happy to do that. So get in touch. You can do that on social. There's also a contact form on the website, piecingpod.com. Let's talk. So I'm going to close this out with a piece of music like I always do. And I realized through these 7 FilmQuest episodes, I haven't promoted at all my new album of songs about my pets, the Pup Pups, A Boy and His Dog and 3 Cats and a Bear. Talk about complicated titles like Tim Travers and the Time Traveler's Paradox. A Boy and His Dog and 3 Cats and a Bear will be out on December 6th. It's my new album of songs all about, and in some cases sung by, my pets. And I got a song on that album. I probably just played it recently for Halloween because it is a Halloween-themed song, but it's also a very kind of sci-fi-y song. And so I think it'll be a good closer for this interview with Stimson Snead. So this is Dr. Frankenstein from the new The Pup Pups album, which will be available on vinyl on December 6th. So I hope you enjoy it, and we'll be back with more Piecing It Together coming up tomorrow.
I created a monster. I must be out of my mind. I created a monster. I'm Dr. Frankenstein. I'm Dr. Frankenstein. I created a monster. He wants snackles all day. I created a monster. He always wants to play. Don't know what I'm gonna do now. He don't listen to nothing. Just keeps prowling and barking. He's gonna rip out my stuffing. I created a monster. I must be out of my mind. I created a monster. I'm Dr. Frankenstein. I created a monster. I must be out of my mind. I created a monster. I'm Dr. Frankenstein.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.